Tashi Dilek, welcome to Tibet TV's program on Tibet support groups. This year, International Tibet Network completed its 20 years of maximizing the effectiveness of the worldwide Tibet movement. The organization campaigns for, quote and unquote, an end to human rights violations in Tibet and restoring rights to the Tibetan people. Today, International Tibet Network is one of the largest Tibet support groups with a coalition of more than 120 Tibet organizations. Let us hear more about the last 20 years of International Tibet Network with one of its longest-serving members, Mandie McKeown. She has worked in the Tibetan freedom movement since 2000, starting at Free Tibet campaign in London after studying at the School of Oriental and African Studies. Mandie was appointed the first campaign coordinator for International Tibet Network in 2009. Tashi Manila.
Tashi Dilek.
Welcome to Tibet TV.
Thank you. I'm delighted to be here.
So my first question is, the International Tibet Network was actually started with an aim of creating a coordination mechanism for the global Tibetan movement. So first of all, tell us about International Tibet Network's evolution and its 20 years of journey for the cause of Tibet.
Sure, I'd be delighted to. So as many people know, the idea of us coming together was the brainchild of Thupten Samdip, who back in the late 1990s made a suggestion to a group of Tibet campaigners at the time, and the suggestion was that by coming together, the goals of the Tibetan freedom movement would be more successfully achieved. And this idea that was planted grew into a plan, and then this plan was then proposed to the plenary at the third International Tibet Support Group Conference in Berlin in May 2000. And this plan was then overwhelmingly received by the conference participants, who very clearly and very quickly saw that by us combining the efforts of groups and the determination for working for Tibetan freedom, pulling this together with a strategic coordinated plan would undoubtedly bring more success for the Tibetan freedom movement. And I really feel very honoured to have been at that meeting in Berlin and to have witnessed the inception of Tibet Network, but also to see how strongly it was welcomed by Tibet groups. And this welcome, this overwhelming support, really is what enabled the network to start. And it very quickly took shape with a very committed elected steering committee, who took on its first part-time coordinator very quickly. And together, the committee and Lorne Stockman, who was the first international coordinator, they established this new system of how Tibet groups could really coordinate together and to work as a team. And the network simply grew from there. Now, 20 years later, this idea, this plan has transformed into what we see now as a collection of Tibet campaigners who are working together, determined in this goal that our collective entity will strengthen and increase the impact that we have on campaigns.
Okay. So, Mandie, when you look back in those 20 years of involvement and service for the cause of Tibet, what do you think have been the major achievements of the organization?
Oh, that's a tough question, really. I mean, looking back, there have been a number of major achievements. Some of them have been really very prominent, but an awful lot are lesser known, but just as important. I think one of the most notable achievements that is remembered is the success that was gained jointly around the 2008 Olympics, when Tibet groups and communities and associations all came together with a very clear, solid goal of using the Olympic Games as a platform to spotlight the situation in Tibet. And this success was enormous. And by working together, the Tibet movement was really able to ensure that Tibet was undoubtedly the number one human rights issue that was raised, and not just by the media, but by governments during the entire period around the Olympics. And most recently, groups have joined forces with other allies to do an awful lot of work targeting companies. So there has been some great success over the past 2 years. Firstly, with the Google campaign, where we worked jointly again to press Google to cancel this search engine that it was designing for China, which was, no mean feat. Google are a big, well-organized company. But moving on from that, the most recent success in that area of campaigning has been with Apple, the world's largest company, that together with this clear strategic campaign, we have been able to force Apple to finally put together on paper a human rights policy that it didn't have before. And that campaign is obviously still going on, because we are working now to press Apple to ensure that they implement this policy so that there is real, tangible success, which will enable change for Tibetans in Tibet. These are big known campaigns that receive a lot of media coverage, but there are other kind of lesser known successes within the network. And some of them are the simplicity of us as a network bringing together groups from across the world, whether it be in our regional meetings or whether it be through online campaign working groups. These are really important opportunities that offer Tibet groups space to develop not only campaigns and to receive trainings to help build skills, but they're really important areas that we use to help build relationships between groups and communities and Tibetan associations, and to enable us all to have more commitment and more trust with each other, which are really two key areas that we need to help us successfully deliver these campaigns.
Okay, Mandie, now I would like to ask you a question on activities that your organizations carry out. Since your organization's inception, there were lots of activities carried out. For instance, Free Tibetan Heroes, Stand Up for Tibet, etc. So how did those activities shape the course of Tibet on international fora?
So the model that we use to develop all of these campaigns and activities that you speak about really rely very heavily on our member groups, because though Tibet Network provides the methods to plan strategically together and to give structure to campaigns, it's only really through the implementation of the campaigns by our members that bring these campaigns to life. And what we found is that by engaging in this way, building multiple, strong, diverse campaigns, there's a bigger spread of the message, and it's easier for Tibet groups and communities and associations to participate together. For example, you talked about the Free Tibetan Heroes campaign. Now, really, this is a campaign platform. So we use that platform to raise the profile of political prisoners and to press for their freedom, but not only press for their freedom, and which is our main aim, but to show the scale of resistance of Tibetans in Tibet against this sweeping crackdown. And we see that multiple Tibet groups take part in this campaign and Tibetan communities. And we've been really successful in raising a number of very key profiles, including Dunduk Wangchun and Golok Jigme, who we're delighted are both now safe, living in exile. But some current profiles are Tashi Wanchuk, the Tibetan language advocate, who we're expecting to be released very shortly. We will continue to work on his case to make sure that he is safe. And most recently, we're developing with Tibet groups, global Tibet groups, a profile of Lundrup Drakpa, the Tibetan singer who was recently sentenced. And this is a new campaign, and there will be new activities that we believe will be engaging. We'll get governments and UN special procedures to be working on his case. And that takes me to another very good example of, activities in the international fora. One very clear example of the work that the network does is with a key project called Tibet Advocacy Coalition, which is a project that we helped to develop in 2013 with a very clear aim of engaging Tibet groups in joined up advocacy work with the United Nations, and this project has a lot of success, and many of the briefings and communications that we supply to Tibet groups are taken to foreign ministries and are taken to permanent missions at the United Nations to ensure that Tibet is not forgotten in these forums, and there is very key work going on.
Mandie, you just said that ITN is a brainchild of Thupten Samdru. So I would ask you a question on this part. When Thupten Samdru, the founder of International Tibet Network, formally started the organization, His Holiness the 14th Dalai Lama blessed the organization with a letter saying, "At this critical juncture in Tibet's history, when our unique culture, environment, and the very identity of our people remain under threat, effective coordination between those who support non-violent path to peace and justice for Tibetan people is needed more than ever." So, Mandie, when you look at these statements, how effective do you think is the non-violent movement for the cause of Tibet?
That's a great question, and again, we feel very honoured that His Holiness said these great things and blessed the organisation in this way. The Tibetan freedom struggle has been notable for decades for its overwhelming commitment to non-violence, and this commitment has been chosen for a number of reasons. One very clear is that His Holiness is such a powerful advocate for non-violence, but also because using non-violent, strategic non-violent action is proven to be far more effective in producing any long-term change. And this is something that we're all committed to finding for Tibet. And this history of the Tibet movement's strategic non-violent action has brought some incredible campaign successes, and not just in the exile movement. As you well know, Tibetan resistance inside Tibet is still going on, including widespread protests and a real refusal to cooperate with China's failed policies, which is in itself a non-violent protest. And this non-violent protest continues now to undermine China's power and provides to us in exile a real inspiration, and it gives legitimacy to all of us who are working on behalf of Tibet around the world.
Mandie, when we look at declarations of 8th International Tibet Support Group held in Dharamshala in November last year, 180 participants from 42 countries unanimously endorsed to stand up against China's systematic violation of human rights in Tibet, reincarnation of Dalai Lama, etc. How does your organization work on these declarations?
Well, as I described earlier, you know, Tibet Network really, we're only a sum of our parts, meaning we're only as successful as any agreed strategic direction that a majority of our members are willing to take. So the declaration issued at the International Tibet Support Group meeting last year, though not strictly a Tibet Network plan because it was from the TSG meeting, but it has given us as a network much strength. As if you look through the declaration, the majority of the agreed campaigns are ones that we have already set out and had already set out to develop. So the commitment from that conference was incredible and has certainly increased our mandate to work on these areas. And since that meeting, so the meeting was a year ago, for the last year, we have definitely seen a marked increase in the participation of Tibet groups in these campaigns. As an example, we have an overarching campaign which is on core values, and that campaign works to challenge China's attempt to permeate, you know, all different levels of our own societies. And under this core values umbrella, we have a number of really successful campaigns. One I touched on earlier, the Stop Apple Censorship, but another, the Cancel China Propaganda, which aims to stop our media from taking money from the Chinese government to hold advertorials, which are basically propaganda on behalf of the Chinese government. And this year alone, we have seen a number of major news outlets drop this propaganda. And then we also have the No Confucius Institute's campaign, which is being extended across the globe, and more groups in more and more countries are developing regional and national plans. So the declaration has been really, really strong for us to enable us to work more with bringing groups together and strengthening our campaigns.
Mandie, once again, many congratulations for your organization's 20 years of service. I would like to end our discussion with a small question. Where does International Tibet Network stand today?
Well, in some ways, it's really difficult for us to celebrate the fact that we still exist 20 years later. You know, realistically, we all wish we had disbanded Tibet Network and Tibet groups because we wish we had achieved freedom for Tibet and for Tibetans. But, you know, we are celebrating, and we're celebrating the fact that we are together, and that we've been able to establish what we think Thupten Samdrup set out to achieve, and that's the coming together of groups from across the globe, bringing together our different strengths and ways of working and our different capacities to be together in coordination, supporting each other between our groups and building with each other and moving forward together in a united way with our global aim of freedom for Tibet. That's where we see ourselves.
Okay, Mandie, with this we're going to end our discussion here. I really thank you for your time with us. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for having me.